Hello and welcome to the Holistic Success Show. I'm Dr. Robert Puff.
And I'm Elizabeth Lozano.
Today we're going to have a guest talk about self-fullness, which means basically being whole, being successful, and being full.
And we're also going to be watching some clips from Dr. Robert Puff on meditation.
And then our first question is going to be, what happens after divorce? What are we to do?
And then our second question is going to be how stress is related to illness and disease. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy this episode of the Holistic Success Show.
What if I could prove to you that meditation could increase your level of internal happiness on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis? You may say, I don't believe you, but I want to talk about a study, and a study that's been repeated, that's been done to show that. First, I want to talk about what's called a set point theory. And what that is we have a set point to happiness. And that's our natural way we interact with the world. And some people tend to be more sad, some people tend to be more happy, and that's pretty much set within inside of us. And the way to prove that is we've done studies on people that have won the lotto, and what we found is, when they win, they're very elated and very excited, but within 6 months, they're back to the level of happiness or sadness they were at prior to winning the lotto. Similarly, people that end up breaking their back and have spinal cord injuries, again, they're very sad at first, it's very tragic, but guess what? In 6 months, they go back to their natural state of happiness. If they had been happy, in 6 months, they're about back to what they were prior to the accident. So we tend to have an internal set point to happiness, and it's pretty set, and it kind of stays with us throughout our lives. However, now I want to talk about a study that was done with a bunch of computer tech people. They'd never meditated before. And what happened with them is they put them in this meditative they taught them meditation, basically. They had to meditate for an hour in the morning and an hour at night for 8 weeks. And then they took Sundays off, so about 6 days a week for 8 weeks. And they said, okay, let's look at their brain and see if there's any form of activity difference compared to a control group. Because what they found is that happier people, their left side of the brain is more active. And with sad people, the right side of the brain is more active. And that's a pretty demonstrable thing you can prove. Okay, the left frontal lobe, to be technical, is more active when you're happy, and when you're not happy, it's just not as active. So they took these computer people, these techie people, and they never meditated before. And they went ahead and they put electrodes on their brain, and they found out what their set point was. Okay, so they had to meditate for 8 weeks, and guess what? At the end of that 8 weeks, their left frontal brain was much more active than the group that hadn't meditated for 8 weeks. So actually what it demonstrated, that meditation made them happier. And then even at a deeper, more exciting level, what happened was they got a hold of some people that had been meditating for decades. They were in monasteries and just, they were meditating gurus. And they said, let's look at their brain. Is their brain very active or is it very slow? What they found is fascinating. The left part of the brain, the part that correlates with happiness, guess what? It was off the scale. They had never seen so much activity in their happy part of their brain. So they kind of said, wow, these guys must be pretty happy campers, the best way I can put it. And I think that's why I want to really show that studies are showing that meditation, even after just 8 weeks, can improve your level of happiness. So think about that, and perhaps say, hey, I'm going to learn more about meditation. And I'm going to learn to meditate because I want to be happier. And again, personally, if I may share, I've meditated now for almost 3 decades. And from when I started, and people that know me can verify this, to where I'm at now, I am so much more of a happier person on a very consistent basis. It's not that bad days don't come, but meditation keeps me grounded, it keeps me peaceful, and it really adds to depth and happiness to my life.
And now it's time for our questions. Our first question comes to us from Tanya F. from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she asks, I am recently divorced and feel like my whole world is falling apart all around me. What are some tips that you can give me to get through this without falling apart completely?
Well, first off, Tanya, I'm very sorry. Divorce is a very, very difficult thing that we often go through. And many marriages do end in divorce. First off, I'm just very sorry for what you're going through, because it is going to be difficult. There's no way of getting around that. Death is like a divorce. There's going to be a grieving, there's going to be anger, there's going to be a lot of emotions coming up inside of you. And, I think just knowing that it is difficult can help a little bit. Being around supportive people that help you is very important.
And there are also support groups too for people who have recently been divorced, because to know that you're not the only person struggling with some of these emotions can be very helpful. But
there's really two parts of divorce I think I want you to be aware of, Tanya. Any of you that are relationships ending or something's ending in your life. The first is, okay, how do I first heal from this? And the second one will be, and how do I move forward? So the first one is healing. And I think it's very important. There's going to be hurt there's going to be anger there, and you need to be getting that stuff out of you. It's like a cut. I often use an analogy. If I get a cut here, and a divorce is like a really bad cut, I need to rinse that cut out. I need to wash it very vigorously, and then it will heal, and ultimately a scar will be left, but I'll feel better. If you don't do that, you're going to have to cover it up, shoot Novocaine into it, painkillers, which are our addictions that we turn to not feel pain. It's going to turn to gangrene, and it's ultimately going to kill you. So you have to treat the divorce. There is pain there. Our favorite is what we call anger work. We have a book called Anger Work, How to Express Your Anger and Still Be Kind. But it's about healing. How do you heal? We have spent 30 decades combined helping people heal around the world. And the way you heal is you have to get those feelings up. There's two feelings that heal. If you watch little kids, what do? They get angry or they get sad when something upsets them. So you need to spend time being angry, not at your ex, but at anger work, taking it out on inanimate objects, talking to people, support groups like Elizabeth said, or you need to be sad about it, allowing yourself to feel the tears. But the trick tell the trick on this sadness part, that one.
Well, it's just that you let yourself cry. You let yourself feel those emotions when you feel that, but you don't follow those thoughts of because it can lead to depression when we just have the thoughts add on to each other, because then it's like, I'm feeling so sad, I'm so horrible, I'm going to be alone forever for the rest of my life, and nobody wants me, and whatever other things it's amazing how it just sticks together, and you really have to be careful with that. Let yourself cry, let yourself feel that emotion, let yourself be angry, but, don't dwell on those thoughts, those negative thoughts, because that's not going to help you heal at all. And, as Dr. Puff was saying earlier, in regards to, being careful with the addictions can come in many forms that we're trying to cover ourselves up. It can be drinking, it could be sex, it could be another relationship that you just jump into right away, and maybe one relationship after the next, because we get that high when we're in a new relationship. You don't have to feel that pain anymore.
Pushes the pain away. Yeah.
And you need to feel that pain, which I know is we want to run away in the other direction from it, but you're not going to heal that way. You need to allow yourself, just like when somebody dies that you're close to. I know when I lost my, close family member, there was times I would just break down and I'd start wailing, and you know what? My neighbors probably thought I was nuts or losing it, but it helped me heal so much, and then after each time I cried, I felt a little bit better, and, maybe it was every day at first, maybe it might be that way for your divorce, but then, slowly but surely, maybe it might be a couple times a week, then maybe it's, once a week, and then, just goes gradually, and letting that anger out too. There's many ways for you to do that.
Can I share an example of that? The person who I had the longest relationship before my wife was my high school sweetheart, and we ended up breaking up. I'll just say she made some bad choices, and I was very angry over the choices she made, because I thought we were going to spend our lives together. And what I did is, it brought up, of course, sadness, but anger. What I used to do, though, is anytime I got upset over it, I'd go to I had a place where there was a punching bag. There was a gym, and I'd go there, and I'd just, allow myself to be angry at the gym, letting that anger out, because I was very angry at her. And I always felt so much better afterwards. I said, whoa, this is great. I feel better, even though I'm going through a very difficult thing. It felt better. So you have to proactively address your feelings, or you're going to do what Elizabeth said. You're going to find other things to suppress those feelings, and that just turns dark. That won't go well. So that's the first part. Make sure you are healing those feelings. And you know what? It can take time. It can take a couple of years. If it's a really intense relationship, it can take literally a couple of years. So even if you're proactively working on it. So Give yourself time to heal. Don't say, I should be over this. Not going to happen. It can take a while.
And that can lead to that also additional depression, because it's like, I should be over this. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
You know, whatever type of thing you might be thinking.
But then the next part is, okay, now you are divorced, so you need to start creating a life for you. You don't throw in the towel and say, my life's over. You need to be involved with friends. You need to slowly, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know. But you need to decide, hey, am I going to risk putting my foot in the water again? Am I going to try again? Am I going to learn from my mistakes? You are getting into a divorce. Look at it and say, I wonder what I can learn from this. What did I do that might have contributed to the downfall of this relationship? What can I learn so I pick the next person that works out well? But then go out there and slowly, but get out there and try to find relationship. Love is wonderful. But if you so many people, I think when they go through a divorce, they just don't move forward. Move forward. Have a life. You can have a beautiful life, and it can go really, really, really well. But you have to move forward. If you stay stuck, if you just jump into another relationship and don't heal, both of those won't go well. So take the time and say, hey, I'm going to now really learn from my mistakes, learn from what happened here, and apply this new principles and get out there and meet someone who's really healthy and good for me.
And the key is, until you really learn to love yourself and heal in the right way, whoever you're going to end up with, it's not going to be a healthy relationship. So make sure you take care of yourself in the way that you do. Love yourself. Loving yourself means taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself, getting your needs met. And then you start up with a relationship with somebody, and that relationship will be beautiful, and you will be with the right person as long as you do that self-care. Yeah, key. It's key. So what Elizabeth said, I just wholeheartedly agree with. Love yourself, Tanya, and find someone who can love you, and then love them. And the best of luck to you. This week's guest is Dr. Sheila Forman. She is a clinical psychologist and also an attorney, a very busy woman. She has written several self-help books, as well as she's on the faculty at Loyola Marymount University and also hosts a radio show called Let's Talk. This is the book we're going to have her talk about today, Self-fulness, the Art of Loving and Caring for Yourself. So, Dr. Forman, thank you very much for coming on our show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do and what makes you unique, because you've got that combo of the attorney/clinical psychologist.
Yeah, I do. I was first an attorney and then became a clinical psychologist, but my background in law actually helps me in my clinical practice because it gives me insight and awareness into people that other psychologists may not have, because I can think like a lawyer as well as a psychologist.
Which sometimes people coming in very often have those questions, right?
Absolutely.
So about this book, Self-fulness, the Art of Loving and Caring for Yourself, this is a really big message that we're trying to teach many of our viewers, is how to take care of yourself, because that's a huge part of being holistically healthy. So why don't you talk a little bit about this book, where it came from, and the message that you're trying to get across in this book?
Absolutely. This book actually came from my clinical practice. What I was discovering, Elizabeth, was that people were coming in, and while they might have been accomplished in one area of their life, they didn't know how to take care of themselves. They were putting the needs of others before their needs themselves. So whether they were taking care of their family or their roommates or their customers, it didn't matter. And so one young woman once said to me that she's afraid to take care of herself because people will deem her selfish. And that's when I came up with the term self-full. I said, what if you're self-full and not selfish? And that sort of began this process of my teaching this concept of self-fullness to my clients, which is really the permission to take care of yourself and put yourself first without feeling guilty.
I like that. And we often are trying to teach that too, even in the books that we've written about children and relationships. And I think for some parents, it might be hard for them to say, wait, I have to put myself first or take care of myself before my child? Like, how is that? And I often use the example, and I don't know if you use this too, is like when the mask falls on an airplane, like who do they say to put that on first?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's in the introduction of my book. That's exactly what I talk about, because on the surface, that idea sounds so selfish. What do you mean put the mask on me first? The people around me are gasping. But if you're gasping, if you're not breathing, then you're of no service to the people around you. It's the same thing with ourself. If we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves, we are really not of adequate service to the people around us. So we need to come first. It's actually in service of others that we put ourselves first. That's the philosophy behind self-fullness.
Absolutely. And, so often, so many people, even in our field of caring for others, if you're a psychologist or a therapist or, anything, even a doctor, a medical doctor, it's amazing. It's like the whole shoemaker's shoes thing, the shoemaker's shoes are falling apart while everybody else's shoes are great. And it's kind of that way even within this field, too.
So much. There's actually something called compassion burnout, where people are too too compassionate, too giving of themselves, don't have enough self-care. And then if I'm burnt out, if I'm not present in the session with my patients, I'm of no use to them.
Absolutely.
So if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not setting appropriate boundaries, eating healthfully, getting the proper exercise and relax and recreation, then I can't serve my clients and nobody wins.
So what you're saying is I have to take care of myself first and then I can help people even more?
Absolutely.
All right. So in this book, I would like for you to talk about, because I know some of my clients, what they've said is, what does that mean? What does that mean, love myself or take care of myself? I have no idea what that means. So can you kind of share what that means for somebody who might be in that place of like, I don't know what that means?
That's exactly where this book comes from, because there's some people out there that genuinely don't know if they prefer vanilla or chocolate. Are they day persons or night persons? They don't know. They've never taken the time to really get to know themselves. This book is written in 2 pieces, and it is a workbook. It's a hands-on, fill-in-the-blank book designed to build a relationship with oneself. The first part of the book basically gives you permission to become self-full and teaches you the skills and tools to do that. It then applies it to all areas of your life so that you learn about yourself in terms of your food habits, your exercise habits, your relationships, both romantic, social, personal, and professional. It's a toolbox of coping skills.
So how do you get the person, like, can you give an example of like how you might get a person to find that out? Like how would somebody, I mean, do you just ask the questions in here, or how does it get somebody to kind of find those answers?
Well, a lot of it is asking questions and then doing the self-reflection. And some of my patients use this as a tool with me in session. Other readers just buy it and then use it as tools with their own work, with their own therapist. But it's also something people can use on their own. But they're great examples and exercises. One of my favorite ones is called From Victim to Victorious. And it's about learning to shift how you explain things to yourself. So you go from the stance of, I can't do anything, poor me, to no, I've accomplished something and I have presence and I have strength and I can move forward. So it's those little exercises that really tweak the mind and tweak our self-image so that we feel better about ourselves, like ourselves more, and then are more capable.
So can you give us an example of how somebody might go from victim to victorious? Victorious. Can you give an example of that? Because I think what you just said was pretty crucial. Because I mean, sometimes when I'm working with people, just as much as like making a list of what you have to do and crossing those things off can be kind of empowering, and doing stuff when you haven't been doing anything and just kind of wallowing in your pity. So can you give some examples of like how somebody can make that, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it just happened this week. I have a patient who's struggling to build interpersonal relationships, and one of the commitments that she made was to go dancing. She was going to take like salsa lessons, and she had made that commitment to her group. She's part of a group therapy process, but she called me on the night of the therapy of the salsa lesson and left me this message. And she said, "I know I made the commitment to group, and I feel awful and bad for letting the group down, but I really don't feel well. I'm running a fever. I think I might be coming down with something. So I'm going to make the decision to take care of myself and stay home rather than go dancing. But I feel terrible about it." And she was beating herself up in the message. So that's where she had the victim stance. I actually thought that her experience was very victorious because what she was doing was addressing her needs. She wasn't feeling well, and staying home and nurturing herself was better than pushing herself and going to a dance class. So I called her back and I said, "I think what you're doing is fabulous." And I helped her switch from feeling like a victim, oh, I'm bad, I'm horrible, I didn't go to my dance class, to wow, I took care of myself and I nursed myself when I wasn't feeling well. When we don't take care of ourselves, it affects every part of our life, and we don't realize it because so many of us are just going through the motions. We are just pushing through. We're on automatic pilot. So yes, on the surface we're getting things done, but the quality of the way we get things done, the depth, is very superficial, and that has long-term consequences that people don't think about. So that's one of the issues. And when we don't take care of ourselves, we really are not at our best. And it's when we're at our best, in psychologically, physically, emotionally, and mentally, that we are of better service to the world, to the people around us, to ourselves. So, self-care benefits everybody, even if it feels selfish initially.
I really, really love the title of this that you have on here.
Thank you.
So I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add on this book, because I know you've also brought another book with you that that I would love for you to talk about.
Sure.
You've got several, and maybe we'll I just would like for you to talk a little bit about that. But is there anything else you want to mention about this book?
The only thing is that it's very user-friendly.
Okay.
You don't need a therapist to work with it, although I highly recommend it because a therapist can always give you insight you can't see. But it's a fun book. It's inspiring. It'll get you, dressing differently, decorating your house differently, really letting yourself shine through. So it's a lot of fun.
It sounds like it really helps you to gain a lot of awareness about yourself by some of the questions.
That's the key.
Absolutely.
To know yourself and to actually like who you end up being.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for talking about this book. So why don't you talk to us about the other book
My
that
other
you brought
book
with us? Yes.
is called, here you go, Do You Use Food to Cope? It's actually my doctoral dissertation turned into a self-help book. When I did my doctoral dissertation, I was looking at compulsive overeating, and I was trying to identify why some people use food as a coping mechanism to make themselves feel better and why some people don't. And as a result of my research, I came up with this 15-week program to help overeaters identify that they are overeaters, become aware of their relationship with food, and then heal it by learning other ways to deal with their life.
I wanted to find out from you, who would this book be great for, and how would somebody know that if they're, they are using food to cope? And also, what are some tips for them to use instead of using food to cope?
Yeah, great question, because so many times people aren't even aware that they're using food as a coping mechanism because it's so habitual and food is so easy to acquire in our society. You can be at the car wash and buy a candy bar. You can be at the pet store and buy a bag of chips. It's amazing. So the first step in this process and in any process in overcoming emotional overeating is starting to become conscious of the fact that you do use food outside of physical hunger. And it's really about learning the difference between when you're physically hungry and when you're emotionally hungry. When you're physically hungry, the appropriate thing to do is eat because you're meeting a physical need. When you're emotionally hungry, feeding yourself isn't going to meet the need because the need isn't hunger. The need is not physical hunger, it's something else.
Yeah.
So the rest of the book is really about helping people identify what is that something else and learning how to address it directly. So a simple example would be the person, this happens to all of us, you come home at the end of the day, you're exhausted. The first thing you do is go to the fridge and you start feeding yourself. Well, you're not really hungry, but you might be tired, you might be angry, you might be stressed out, you might be anxious. When you can identify those emotions and what the real problem is, then you address the real problem. You don't turn to the refrigerator or food to cope. And whatever weight you're carrying that is excess starts to leave, and you build a set of tools and skills that you can use anytime and not turn to food when you're not physically hungry.
And this actually ties into this because it's taking care of yourself, right?
Right.
I mean, if you're learning the things that you do when you're stressed out and you're learning new ways to cope instead of using these things, because food can be an addiction like any other, right?
Yes, it can be.
People can sometimes tip the scales where they are now, their life is in danger. They've got diabetes or there's heart problems or whatever other things can kind of happen. So this definitely ties into this.
It does.
So.
There's actually a chapter in Self-fulness called Self-full Eating, which is about becoming conscious. This is more.
Okay.
So for the typical person who just, has a little bit of weight, extra weight, or just occasionally goes into the chips or the ice cream, this book would be great. But for someone who's really struggling, who's carrying excess weight, this is the ultimate answer. Diets don't work. In fact, there's a whole step on acknowledging that diets don't work. It's about connecting to your physical and emotional hunger and meeting the real need, which is hard in the beginning, but easy once you master it.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. And if you can tell us how people can get a hold of you, where they can listen to your radio show. It's on the internet.
It's on the internet.
And then
right?
also, how can they get a hold of these books?
Sure. Well, the easiest thing, these books are available on Amazon.com, so you can just put in my name, Dr. Sheila Forman, or the names of the books. That's very easy.
Okay.
And they also each have their own website. This website is doyouusefoodtocope.com. This is theartofselffulness.com. Self-fulness has a hyphen in the middle. So those are other ways. And then I have a website just for me, drsheilafforman.com, where these links are. So if you can't remember anything else, just remember my name. And my radio show is on healthylife.net. And it airs live Friday mornings Pacific time, but anytime 24/7 on the archive. So
thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
Thank you for having me.
Having you. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
When did meditation begin? 5,000 to 3,500 BC was first evidence of meditation on our planet. And how we know meditation began back then is in the Indus Valley, which is near Persia. We have seen on the cave walls pictures, petroglyphs of people sitting in meditative poses. Their arms are crossed, their legs are crossed, and their eyes are somewhat slanted. Really what you see in typical meditative poses today. And from that early time, it spread throughout our planet, really. And all the major religions caught on. They said, wow, this meditation stuff is great. And so at the mystical tradition of religions, and what I mean by that is really the people that just dove deep into their faith and said, I don't want faith to be something that I just participate in. I want my faith to become who I am. Meditation took hold. And that's true of any faith. Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islamic, Judaism, they all took on their form of meditation. It particularly manifested in what is called the mystical tradition of each religion. And that's really people that try to be close and intimate with God, not based upon tradition, but based on a very personal, one-on-one interaction with God or the universe. So they would meditate, or they do meditate around the world, and that's that meditation which invites God, invites the deep spirituality of the universe into your life, where the scriptures and typical prayer and studying is really using your brain to engage with religion, where meditation is really being a receptacle, being still, being silent, and allowing the universe and God to enter within your heart and discover who you are. And many decades ago, I got interested in meditation really through what has happened in science and all the medical benefits of meditation. But then I learned about the spiritual benefits of meditation, and when I learned about that, how it could actually help you grow spiritually and at a deep level, I got excited, and I just kind of really took meditation by both hands and grabbed onto it. And it became really the cornerstone of who I am and what I do. Because what meditation helps with, it helps you to be present with what is, and it helps me to get to know who I am and get to know who I am in relationship to the world. And it helps me to be still and to be present with what is. And in that beingness, that stillness, is truly such tranquility and such beauty, really beyond your imagination and beyond my imagination, because the mind can imagine what is in the silence. Because in the silence, I've discovered, is such a vast universe of beauty. And I want to encourage you, perhaps, to explore that with me. Because meditation truly is a transforming tool to take you deep within yourself, to discover who you are, what you are, and opens you up to the vast universe that you can explore, be with, participate with, and be still and silence, and become a human being instead of a human doing.
This week's second question comes to us from Michael W. from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he asks, I have often heard that stress can lead to illness and disease. Is this true? And if so, how do I prevent myself from getting sick?
Good question, as always. We have such great guests asking great questions. I want to start with an adage. And what is the adage? If you don't take time to be healthy, you have to take time to be sick. And so, what it is that if you don't take time to be healthy, you are going to be sick. So stress really causes illness. I mean, does it cause all of illness? No, obviously. I mean, there are things that we cannot help. And all of us are going to get sick and die someday. That's inevitable. But most of illness, I have many medical doctors that will tell me, and research has supported this too, that between 60 to 80% of people that walk in that door and say, I'm sick, it's basically being caused because they're not taking care of themselves and they're stressed and they're overwhelmed. So
they're not eating right. They're not taking the time to rest. They're not doing the things. They're burning the candle at both ends. I remember my mom used to say that, you're burning the candle at both ends when I was younger, going to school. Yeah. And sure enough, when I would get sick, I would get strep throat a lot is one of the things that would happen to me. So, definitely when you're not getting rest, you're not eating healthy, and you're staying up long hours, you're working, your immune system is lowered now also. And so if somebody comes along that's sick, guess what? Guess who's going to get sick?
Similarly, when I was in college, I used to, I wouldn't miss school, but at the end of the semester, after the finals, I would be sick for a week afterwards. It was almost like clockwork. Oh, I'm sick again, It's like, because I wasn't taking care of myself. So, what we've learned is part of this holistic success thing is you have to take care of yourself. I know we keep saying it because it's very, very important. Because when you take care of yourself, you alleviate that stress. And meditation is a great way to alleviate the stress. Exercise, eating right, all these things work together to improve your life.
And studies have proven how much those things help with certain conditions like heart conditions and diabetes and different things as well too, But I would encourage you to talk to a medical doctor if you have some of these conditions. But, stress, we all have predisposition for things. Within my family, there's diabetes and there's heart problems as well. And I know that I need to take care of myself. I know that I need to eat right. I know that I need to exercise and I need to watch, my amount of stress. But, even then, I still need to take care because let's say one day that does happen where I do end up with that, stress definitely, let's say you have diabetes, that increases your blood sugar.
On that line, and I apologize, I'm not trying to be offensive right now, but just what happened to me was kind of when I learned this stuff quite a while ago, I learned to take better care of myself. And so what happened was, where before I'd gotten sick pretty often, like I said, and every semester I started getting sick. For the last 25 years, as I learned to kind of balance my life and make sure, I smelled the roses, watch the sunsets, exercise, sleep right. In the 25 years that I have been working, I've only missed one day of work. And because I got food poisoning. And so, next week I may not be on the show because I'm sick and Elizabeth will have to do the same thing. But up to this point, it's been a 25-year run. Not that I haven't got sick, but I've never had to miss work because of illness. So I think, it kind of works. Maybe I'm a little unique, but it still kind of works. So, if you can take time to be healthy, you really don't have to take the time to be sick. And most people, when they get sick, is it not because they're stressed?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
recently went on a trip, because, I recently got sick. I actually recently got strep throat. What had happened is that I flew to Spain, and it was a very, very long trip. We traveled for about 21 hours of that. And the week before, I was playing catch up. I was still taking the time to take care of myself. I was walking. I was doing those things. But the long trip, I think, is what did it. And also being in the same airspace as people for so long, where you've got people that are sick and coughing and not covering their mouths. So what can you do about that, right? So, I did get sick, but I did what I needed to do to get better. And the rest of my trip was awesome. I got to enjoy that. But, we still can get sick. We all aren't as fortunate as Dr. Puff. But at the same time, I noticed that I hardly ever get sick anymore. That was a really rarity. I take vitamins. There's certain things that I do to take care of myself.
Regularly.
I exercise regularly. I get rest.
Yep.
As long as I do those things, I'm in good shape. And also,
and you have been. I've known you now I've known Elizabeth, I don't know, like 8-9 years. And when I first met her, she got more, she would get sick more often. And now you really have, we all get sick.
Yeah.
It's just, she is better. And I think there isn't a magic to it. It's just, if you can increase a little bit. I do believe I have a strong disposition, but nonetheless, taking care of yourself really has its benefits. And even, financially, because if you're not sick, you got to go to work.
Yeah. And I was just going to add too, sometimes it might not, our idea of illness, I myself sometimes have back issues. And if I don't get enough rest, or if I'm doing things that I shouldn't do, like picking up heavy things or not doing my back exercises, guess what happens? My back starts to hurt me, and then I'm out and I'm done. If you don't take the time to take care of yourself, you have to take the time to get better, right? Or to be sick. So there's definitely, a lot to that.
And really, again, I often say this is important because I don't want anyone to feel, badly about yourself. Is okay if 90% of the time you're ill, but if you say, hey, I notice that if I walk, one time a day for a couple blocks around the neighborhood, I'm 85% better and sick, and I'm 5% better. Do that 5%. That little increase is great. And don't think overnight I'm just not going to get sick again. That's probably not going to happen. You're going to get sick, and you're going to struggle with stress. But if you can just decrease the stress by a little bit this month, a little bit next month, and we keep giving you tips of how to do that, and we have lots of things available to you. If you can change that, you'll find you will actually feel better.
And I just thought of something, because the opposite of stress would probably be happiness and having fun, right? And you know what one of the best medicine is? Laughter.
Absolutely.
Laughter is one of the best medicine that you could take. So you don't have to really take that, but you experience that, so.
And even this show, which of course you would think is a lot of stress, but we actually make sure it's a lot of fun, and we really have a blast, and we enjoy ourselves. I think, so whatever you're doing, enjoy it and reduce the stress. It matters, again, because life is really better when the stress isn't there, and life goes well. So take time to be healthy, take time to be well, and life goes well. Don't you think?
I absolutely do. So you take care of yourself. This week's quote Dr. Puff was kind enough to share with me, and it is from a saint whose name I hope I don't butcher up too much. So it's Saint Seraphim of Sarov, and the quote is, "Instead of condemning others, strive to reach inner peace. Keep silent, refrain from judgment. This will raise you above the deadly arrows of slander, insult, and outrage, and will shield your glowing hearts against all evil. To me, that means that we really should watch how we judge other people. And you know, I've also used this, and I've heard this before, is that when you point your finger at somebody, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. Think about that. Have a great week. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Holistic Success Show. Remember, we can't do it without you, so send us those questions.
And for those of you who did this week, we'll be sending you a free copy of our book, CD, DVD, whichever you like, signed for you as a way of saying thank you.
We look forward to seeing you next week, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you, and take care. Bye.